Hey, remember this piece of shit? Yeah? Well, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about this record. But what I would like to talk about is the press leading up to its release, because the label knew that the band was taking a huge risk by combining death metal and industrial, which had never been attempted until this album's release in 2011. But they knew that ignorant metalheads like me were going to be all over it for combining genres, and not because they're analytical enough to spot very terrible songwriting and cringeworthy musical choices, but they knew that it was going to get roasted. So what they decided to do was appeal to authority and get a bunch of their label mates to go ahead and say great things about the album prior to its release. So they enlisted band members from the groups Nile, Samael, Behemoth, and Grave. For some reason, for all too fans of the band Grave, who wanted to know what Grave had to say about an upcoming Morbid Angel release. But before we get into what they had to say, I wanted to talk about the idea of camaraderie versus competition, because the hug fest that happened before this album never would have happened in the early '90s. I believe firmly that any of the bands in question here would have jumped all over the chance to dethrone Morbid Angel. But because we were well into the internet era where it was impossible to say anything bad about anyone, they decided to go ahead and hug it out and say that the album was great. And oh boy, were they all collectively lying. But I want to talk about my own experience with this concept. I had said before that I try to be honest with my friends' bands when they come up to me and ask me how I feel about their material. I don't like to be an asshole. I know that this channel would tell you otherwise. My goal is to try to unlock people's potential. I know that people have it in them to create something great, and I like to be challenged, and I think that more people should be challenged. And this album is the result of not being properly challenged. Although they were getting pretty lousy press with the album Heretic that came out in 2003, I believe, fans had to wait 8 long years for this one. And many people thought that they were going to go ahead and right the ship. And this really makes Heretic look amazing in comparison. But I back to my experience with how to deal with the Hugfest that is supporting your local scene. I have always had a hard time with going ahead and being as honest as possible with people, but I still throughout history, if you'd ask people in Milwaukee here, I've I've told people when they have done things that are subpar, and it's hard for anyone to hear. It's hard for me to hear. I've definitely done some growth myself as a musician, but I know that people can do better if they feel like they're going to be checked for doing worse, and uh, I know that Morbid Angel themselves, after this record's release, they kind of tried to overcompensate for how wimpy this album was, and they tried to put out something that was so aggressive that it felt posturing, and it felt more artificial than this album even, which is pretty crazy to believe, because this is a very processed, super I don't know, sterile affair. And although you can't say that about the next record, the emotion behind it was very forced. But anyway, I wanted to go through and have a look at what all these bands had to say about this record, and I wanted to instead put some ideas forward as to what they should have said if they wanted to actually be competitive, because I think competition is healthy, brings out the best in people, and I do believe that if more bands were honest with each other, if more people were honest and tried to achieve greatness instead of just trying to appeal to popular whatever's popular at the time, we could probably get some more great records out of even very tired old bands like this. But yeah, let's have a look at what some of these guys had to say. Carl Sanders of Nile states, "No other band in the entire extreme metal genre but Morbid Angel would have ever dared to make Illud Divinum Insanus. There are going to be quite a few unimaginative underground purists who think they know better what kind of album Morbid Angel should or should not be putting out. But with this record, Trey and David prove that they answer to no one but themselves. It is an incredibly well written, performed, recorded, and produced record." Holy fuck. Can you believe the nerve of this guy? So if he had been honest about the record and also decided to take the opportunity to boost his own band while Morbid Angel faltered, he probably would have said, "Look, I'm as tired as Egypt as Trey probably is of the Ancient Ones. But we're old, our fans are dumb, and at the very least, I'm stealing riffs from Creepshow 2 instead of my idiot wife's shock rock band. So I figure you owe us a few more purchases of the same album over and over, you ankh-keystring losers." Michael Stan of Dark Tranquillity states, "The ultimate voice of death metal is back, as hellish as ever. What the fuck album was he listening to?" So I used my Gothenburg decoder ring to find out what he was actually saying, and he states as such: "I've been in both of Sweden's wimpiest bands, and even though Dark Tranquillity has shit the bed for decades, we still wouldn't unleash a turd of this magnitude regardless of the pirate shirts you might see me wearing." Then we have Vorf from Samael. Remember good old Vorf? Well, he states, "Glad to see Morbid Angel are back. We had our share of criticism when we first incorporated electronic elements in our sound, and we know it takes courage and passion to follow one's own stream of inspiration. This time, the guitar work is more impressive than ever, and those 11 songs are a real tour de force. With this new album, they're not afraid to take the hit from the more conservative audience, but that's what it takes to be extreme." Like the others, Vorf is completely full of shit, and what he probably meant was, "I haven't been able to write something not embarrassing since Ceremony of Opposites, so I couldn't fucking wait for Morbid Angel to join Tiamat in the two-band list of acts that Samael is better than." And last we have Blackheim of Catatonia, who at the time of this quote, I highly doubt had heard the record, because he states, "Morbid Angels still prove that they can continue their legacy and deliver their madness with a skill so elite. The metal scene has no choice but to give back the crown to the undisputable kings of death metal. Morbid, morbid, morbid." So of course he said that because he didn't want to get off of Jonas's gravy train, but what I'm sure he meant to say was, "Since I haven't been able to write a riff since 2003, I understand what Trey is thinking by having his vocalist write everything. But I guarantee you that listening to us instead of them will net you way more porky goth chicks, because unlike the new Morbid Angel, we try to make you sad on purpose." So I think it's safe to say that all these quotes from these bands didn't help the reception of this album at all. And all they really did was make the fans of the bands that were quoted feel all the more disillusioned. Because, as I've stated before, the one thing that metalheads hate more than anything is feeling lied to and being sold something. And the genre is something that we escape to because we don't like being sold on garbage. And here we go. All the popular bands on the label decided to huddle together and do just that. And I do believe that if all the way down to the local scene, if we stop being salespeople and actually talk about what we're doing collectively or individually, we could probably figure out exactly what we're all capable of. Because this wasn't it. So thanks for listening. Remember to be honest with each other.